Hey everybody, Mark here, and today we're going to be talking about a game that I have played a little bit of, but I've mostly watched everybody else play because I'm not as great as I'd like to be, and that is Furi. If you don't know, it is a game that came out recently by the Game Bakers. It is on Steam, and it is free for PlayStation Plus members. So if you have PlayStation Plus account, and you feel like getting the game for free, that's a really good game to get. It's pretty good, and we're going to be discussing today its story and the characters in it, because that's one of the things that a lot of people were very confused about, because the story's kind of vague and a little bit. I'll put it like this: some games kind of hold your hand on the story, some games kind of just throw you into the world and expect you to kind of make your own story or figure out what the heck is going on. Fury does a bit of both by giving you hints and clues and little nuggets for you to have about the story and about the history of the characters in the story, but it doesn't give you enough unless you really, really look into it, and then for the most part, you kind of have to fill in your own blanks, which a lot of people don't like about the game, and I can understand why. But me, being the overly analytic person that I am, went and looked so much more into this than I probably should have. And I discovered some things and pretty much put together what I feel like each character's reasons for doing what they did and the story in general. And it's basically my interpretation of it. But what I'm gonna do, of course, first is give you guys spoiler-free um, review and recommendation of the game, and then we're gonna get into the story. Okay. To be honest, Fury is a hack and slash bullet hell game that focuses strictly on fighting bosses. That's all you do in the game. Is you go from one boss to another. It would technically be considered more of a boss rush type of game. There's no enemies in between. There's no level ups. You basically fight with the abilities that you have, which are shot bursts, sword slashes, evasions, things like that. Each boss fight has its own individual mechanics that make the fights unique to one another, and various, I guess you could call them gimmicks, that each character uses to their advantage, and archetypes that they fall into as far as their personality, and their aggressiveness, um, as well as their motivations. I would give the game about an 8 or 9 out of 10. The only reason I wouldn't give it a 10 out of 10, of course, is because the story is a little too vague. Like, there's a difference between leaving a story, like, kinda, sorta out there, and then having a solid story that leaves a little bit to the imagination. If I had to say there was a story like that, I would say it's more like Dark Souls. Dark Souls gives you just enough to go on to understand where you are and why you're there. But past that, you learn nothing, you know nothing, and anything else that you learn, you basically glean from playing the game. Um, but Fury just, it throws several nuggets about the characters, but nothing about what's going on until you get to the end, which kind of fills you in on, okay, this is what's happening, this is why you're here, or this is why you were there. And I mean, again, enough so that you could figure it out yourself if you really put the time and effort into it. I just don't know that there's a lot of people who are willing to put that time and effort into a story. I think the game is lovely and definitely worth the effort of trying to find out what the story is, because you get very attached to some of the characters in it. I know I did. Um, but I would definitely recommend that you play this game. And before you watch the rest of this video, I would recommend that you go buy it or go get it off of this PlayStation Plus and just play it. It's amazing, it's fun, and I personally enjoyed the heck out of it for all of two bosses. I can't get past the third one. I can't do it. I can't do it. It's too hard. But I love the third boss. Third boss is by far my favorite. And after watching everybody else play the games, fighting wise, the third boss is still my favorite. Okay. Everybody, that concludes the spoiler-free edition of version, portion, section, whatever you want to call it, of this. So if you don't want to be spoiled on it, please leave the video now. 5, 4, 3, a 2, a 1. Alright. This story is basically a clusterfuck of characters who have a reason that they want to kill you and or stop you from getting out of your jail cell. Followed by one man who really wants you to get the hell out. We're gonna go by these characters one at a time, and I'm pretty much gonna like sum up what their reasons for doing it is, and what I feel like their backstory is, and just kind of try to piece together a bit of the story for you if I can. If I can. Let me see if I can help you a little bit. The first boss is known as the Chain. You see him in the beginning of the story as the man who is antagonizing you, beating the crap out of you, and he's telling you he's gonna kill you over and over again. You're gonna die over and over again. He's gonna be that person to do that. He comes off originally as very sadistic and just somebody who really enjoys inflicting pain on others. Because of that, I feel like he's very much so a sadist. Sorry, not sadist, sadist. And that he's very much so used to being in charge and in control. Which leads me to believe that on their planet, he was definitely a character or somebody who was in a leadership-like position where he was like a drill sergeant or like some kind of torturer of some kind. Which is really off-putting considering that they're, where they live is just very, peaceful. Like when you get to the end of the game and kind of look at the planet and everything, it just looks very serene. Doesn't have a lot of buildings. It's very nature based. So it's very weird that you have somebody who's so militaristic in a place where a military doesn't look like it would be a prime concern. But the fight is fairly fun. It's basically fair, and it's the fight that teaches you the ropes. So it's just very weird. The second boss is the Strap. I really think that's a weird name. I mean, I know she's strapped down, but okay. As far as backstory goes, this is where it gets more interesting. The Strap is basically the voice, which is the bunny that frees you in the beginning. Yeah, this game sounding a little convoluted, isn't it? But the Strap is basically a being that did not exist on the planet, but came to the prison or the cell or the planet. It's never really explicit, but it's kind of implied that it came to the prison, and I'll get into that in a minute. But came to the prison and kind of sort of was looking for something so angrily, so violently, and it started to destroy everything in its path, and that the only thing they could do was constrain it and hold it and build a prison around it that rebuilt itself as she destroyed it, which was the only way she wasn't going to be able to get out. Which personally I think is kind of ingenious. But the thing that's implied is like, because it says, when he got there, it made things worse for her. Which implies that the Strap was there before Ryder was. Or Stranger. He's given two names. But Strider, Strider, this is not Strider Hear You, sorry. But Stranger arrived after she got there. Now I don't know if that means arrived to the planet or if that means arrived to the cell. My theory behind it, personally, is that when Ryder got to the planet, he was greeted with happy people who wanted to just figure out who he was. And instead of a quick survey of the planet like he was supposed to do. So she came down, destroyed things, and then got sent to the prison. And I feel like somewhere within that, Stranger's identity got revealed. And and everything else just kind of fell apart when she got there. I feel like she definitely came from the the mothership that he came from, but just that she was looking for him, found him, and she was eventually stopped and imprisoned. But her presence and her desire to look for him kind of tipped somebody off. I feel like it tipped someone off. And that's when they found out who he was, or that he was there for destruction as opposed to just being some random visitor. But it definitely implies that they had some type of prison before they imprisoned him. Not the full-fledged prison that he's in when he gets there. When you get to the main of the story and he's imprisoned in the beginning. I personally think that more than likely there was maybe 2 or 3 jailers. Maybe the first one, and 2 others, which I'll get to in a minute. But I think that those were the originals, and the rest joined up specifically because of Stranger being the one who was imprisoned. I'll get to that. But that brings us to the third boss, which is where you start to get a bit more into the actual meat of the story. The Line. He's kind of a prophet of sorts. He kind of sees the future, he can see events before they happen, and he kind of controls the flow of time. The voice, which is the bunny that follows you around again, kind of remarks that, he can see the future, he could see what was coming, but if that was the case, why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he say anything? And that basically nobody listened to him. I like to think that when Stranger got here, the Line was the first one to say, something's wrong. This man isn't who he says he is, or isn't who you think he is. Because I don't think Stranger speaks. But I'll get to that in a minute. But, the Line, I personally feel like, was trying to warn everybody, but no one listened to him. Everyone just thought Stranger was a nice extraterrestrial. And so they could trust him. And they didn't see that he could be a dangerous weapon. And only the Line could see that, because he could see the future and see the destruction he was going to cause. So when that happened, he decided to become the jailer because he could see that he was going to escape. He couldn't tell how, and he couldn't see how far he was going to go, but he could see that he was going to be released. And I definitely feel like he personally, even though he knew he was going to lose in the fight, I feel like he kept himself in a state of denial to fight against it. Because what appears strange during the fight is that he consistently refers to your escape failing or your escape not going to work. But for someone who can see the future, it seems odd that he wouldn't realize that you're going to win, or that he would continue to fight despite knowing you're going to win, which only infers that he couldn't see past it because he can't see past his own death. A lot of people say that for prophets, they can't see past the end of their line, or the end of the line of their time of life. So the reason why he says he didn't know how far you were going to get was because he couldn't see your journey past his life, because his life was going to end as soon as you came there and killed him. That's just how I personally feel about it. Next is the Scale. I love the Scale. The Scale is definitely the most interesting character because his is the most that you have to kind of infer, but that can be solidly inferred with facts. Of course, the Scale is out for revenge. I think he became a jailer because of revenge. Because he says he speaks continually over the fight, he's been contaminated. He calls Stranger his creator, when you get to the end of the game and you start going around the planet, you notice that you start killing everything or infecting everything that you run across or that you touch. With the exception of the largest main building. Um, and I think that at some point in time, you contaminated him. You infect the infection from whatever it is that stranger has that kills what is around him, got into him and started to eat away at his life. Hence the suit that he has that kind of encases his entire body. It keeps his infection and his body inside so that he can do what it is he needs to do, which in this case is kill stranger. I feel like he became a jailer after being contaminated, so that he hoping that he would escape and that he could be killed. And I feel like they let him because he's contaminated, you know? I mean, what else is he gonna do? He doesn't really have much of a future for anything else anymore. I'd like to think that due to his ability to move around in water rather well, that he was some type of diver or fisherman of some kind, just some occupation that's very used to the water. Um, which is why he chose the form that he did. Um, and I just feel like he's a very enraged character, but also kind of sadistic in his own right, of understanding that of feeling that he's no longer worth life. But that his only goal is to get revenge for his life being wasted by a stranger. Okay, fifth boss, and definitely, in my opinion, one of the saddest bosses. One of. The other one is inherently sadder because of the evidence that supports things, but I will get to that one in a minute. But the Hand is the fifth boss you come on. He has the awesome motif. I love his battle. It's very physical. And I loved watching, the kind of physical hack and slash combat that he favored. He is the protector. I feel like, as the decent military that they had, I feel like he is the leader of that military, so to speak. He's definitely the head of it. And it's told to you that he kidnapped you. Or that not kidnapped, that he incarcerated you. He's the one who captured you with the aid of about 100 men. I feel like Strider definitely killed all 100 of those men. When they eventually attacked him, because they found him to be toxic and dangerous, I feel like those 100 men were killed. Instant death. And the Hand was the only one that could stand up to you. I've seen a lot of people speculate that, the Hand's wife was killed by Strider. I mean, it's not Strider. Can I please stop saying that? By Stranger. But I don't see that just because of how detached he is during the fight in the beginning. I definitely feel like he would be more enraged or definitely hold more of a personal vendetta. But in the beginning of the fight, he just says, you have nothing to fight for. So you're going to lose. I feel like the only emotional attachment he has is to his son, which is why he fights and became a jailer, because he wanted to protect his son. He didn't want to be sitting down on the planet just waiting for you to break free eventually. And I feel like he's definitely one of the people that after you found out that you were this terrible force to be reckoned with, he and the one after him definitely listened to the line when he may have said, he's going to break free, and they may have been like, okay, well, we need to become the Guardians to stop him. And I definitely think that the Hand takes more of not a pride sort of I beat you sort of motif to it, but to a I've done it once, I will do it again if I have to sort of motif to it. I also feel like I feel really bad about his son. I don't want to part of me doesn't want to play the game anymore because I don't want to get to that point. I don't want to kill him. I personally wish that the third ending in the game happened before him, so I could feel a little better and be like, okay, a man and his son are still together and everything's peaceful and happy, and I'm not sitting in a ball rolling back and forth crying like, no, I just killed a man's son, I just killed his son's father. But no. um I definitely like his design. The battle is very good, and he definitely gives off the vibe of wanting to rear his son in the right way, so to speak, and that he wants to discipline and show his son the correct path, as stated several times, especially one time when he goes you've given me an what is it? You've given me an opportunity to show my son an important lesson, that when good looks away, evil thrives, proceeds, whatever the word is. But that he really wanted to impress those values into his son so much so that he was willing to die for them. But toward the end of the fight, he becomes, I feel like, enraged and a little terrified because he didn't think he was going to lose. He becomes terrified of the thought of being separated from his son, which is when he starts to hammer away viciously. I think it's like 10, 12 attacks total that he just unleashes. Because I think at that point he's just like very terrified. He's like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die, and my son could be next. He could go in that house and he could kill him, and I don't want that. So he like loses his composure that he keeps throughout the entire fight and just completely tries to demolish you. And in the ending cutscene, when he rushes at you, he takes his helmet off and he just goes head forward, sword drawn. Like, I think that was a very rash move, considering how poised and confident he is in the entire fight. So he definitely was a panicked father to me. And that's just how he reads as a character. Next is the song. The song is very interesting because there's a lot I had to infer about her that isn't fact-based. But it makes sense. When you first meet the song, or before you meet the song really, the voice tells you that, so to speak, it was him cleaning up his mess. She's trying to clean up her mess. What confuses me about that in the beginning is I was like, what mess? What mess did she cause? And she doesn't elaborate. She doesn't say anything. But what would make sense is if the song was technically the leader of the people on that planet. Or at the very least, a type of envoy or emissary who deals with diplomatic affairs from other planets. Just a leader of some kind. And I would think that because of her initial peaceful demeanor and her offer to spare your life in the beginning, that she was originally not inclined to use violence towards you. And she was the one who directly ignored the line's suggestion about you being dangerous. So when you get to her, she's like, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. None of this should have happened. I think she genuinely believes that all of this effort was wasted, all these lives were wasted. I, however, don't believe, like many people do, that she actually cares for him. I think she inherently hates him. Or not so much him as what his presence and his actions caused for her. And why she atones for it by becoming a jailer to stop him should he ever escape. I think that the song is very two-faced, so to speak. She gives off a kind, benevolent sort of demeanor, but a lot of her quotations, especially later on in the fight, definitely sound hypocritical because she constantly says, you deserved, I take it back, you deserve the chains and the punishment. You deserve all of that. Which really reads as kind of false, because, not false that she says that, but false about what she says in the beginning, that it was all a mistake. I mean, she's only saying that to get on your good side, to placate you. She very much so reads off like a politician, so to speak, which led me to believe she was the leader of some kind, made the mistake of trusting you, and that the devastation that you caused, she feels responsible for. Which is why the voice says is that it was her mistake. also that she's the reason that he's there. When he says she even trapped me in this place, I feel like it was then after what happened, she then said, all right, we need to build this big prison to keep him in, and I need you to do it because he was an architect. He was the one who originally built the prison that the strap was kept in. And she saw that and she figured out, okay, if he built this, he can build this big mausoleum kind of thing that can house him and keep him away from our planet. And he had no choice in the beginning because he felt that if he didn't do it, his daughter was in danger. But we'll get to that particular point in a minute. Next after that is the burst. The burst is definitely, game-wise, the hardest boss. There are 2 bosses, technically 3, after this one, but I definitely feel like the burst is the most difficult of bosses. She definitely reads as a gamer, or someone who just definitely doesn't take it seriously. The reason I feel more she's a gamer, so to speak, or that she has a very gamer-like mentality, is because one of her quotes for winning, which isn't really her, is that you hear like some kind of announcement say achievement unlocked, critical damage or critical hit or something, which reads off as very gamer. She also constantly implies it as a game and that she wants to have fun. She wants you to play. She wants you to give it her very best shot. Now, what really leads me to believe that the entire thing was built before Stranger got there, or at least a good portion of it, is because at some point during the fight, she says, what is it? I'm trying to think. Oh yeah. The others thought they could win too. Or the ones before you thought they could win too until the very last moment. Do you think you're smarter than them? A lot of people think that's her saying, the ones you beat, the ones before you, the ones before me, you beat them. Do you think you're better than they are? But that doesn't make sense because, first off, the wording is wrong, and also it's kind of implied, yes, I'm smarter than them, I beat them. So I definitely feel like it was more or less, in actuality, that she's referring to the fact that she's been doing this before. She's done this before. She's been doing this before. And that she's saying, I've beaten people before. I've beaten these guys before. Beaten guys like you before who've tried to escape, who've tried to get out of the prison. And you think you're better than they are? I'm going to take you down too. Which just really makes sense of a lot of people's actions, such as the chain when he's insistent that you're going to go back into the cell before he dies, because anyone who's ever escaped has gone back, has been brought back. It also makes sense of the song and the hand's confidence in that they're going to beat you because they've beaten others before. But she definitely has a gamer mentality. She doesn't take the fight seriously at all. And it's definitely implied that she's a kind of complex of just being better. I definitely think she was the type of person who never took anything seriously, which distanced herself from a lot of people. And she went to tinkering with toys, playing with the toys, and just kind of making the bots that she uses in the fight as ways to test her strength and her ability to train herself, because she wanted to be the best. She wanted to conquer. She revels not so much in the game as much as she does the victory, as the harder the victory comes, the better the achievement is. As kind of referenced in the end when you get to her final stage and she goes, or that she says that she's been waiting for this moment, that you're not going to take this moment for her. I think she's saying that she's finally gotten an opponent who can bring her to this point, but she's going to prevail, she's going to win, and you're not going to take that victory from her. One thing that confused me about the fight, though, that I found really weird, was that after the fight, she goes, assuming manual control, which makes me think that either she's some trying to animatron of some type, or not animatron. Been playing too much Five Nights at Freddy's. But that she's a some kind of cyborg of some kind, and she was being controlled because she says manual control, and she starts trying to shoot you directly at point. Another thing that really confused me was in the last sequence where she starts bringing up where the barriers start coming up. Is that why are you using the barriers when you could just scope him and kill him? You don't need the barriers. The only thing the barriers do at this point is serve to get keep him from being killed. Which kind of enforces that she's a gamer, because a true gamer mentality is that in any situation there must be a chance for victory and a chance for failure. There must be a way for you to win. There must be a way for you to lose, and that is for all parties involved. And I think she just in her head was like, this isn't fair. It's too easy. It cheapens my victory if I can just no scope kill without there being some way for him to dodge or evade. So I'll bring up the barriers, which seemed very not taking it seriously, which is something that the voice mentions before you go to fight. So it just reinforces everything that he says about her. Gotta turn the page. We're almost done here, guys. Next is the Edge. The Edge takes, to me, the second most inference just because there's very little you know about him. The only thing the voice tells you is that he's trained consistently for this day. It's all he wants. It's all he wants to do. And even during the fight, it sounds more like he's encouraging you as some type of teacher or some type of leader. It's like some type of older brother, sensei, so to speak, as opposed to someone who wants to defeat you and send you back. And I personally think that he has no intentions of winning, especially since one of his quotes during the fight is, especially if you're losing, is like, do you need more time? And he's constantly like, come on, you can do better than this. I know you can do better than this. You can fight me harder than this. I want to see everything you've got. I want to see you shine. And personally, I think from what you can grab from that is that he's definitely the warrior type. He definitely grew up with a type of mentality in his head that he wanted to be some great conquering warrior. But I feel like they definitely live on a peaceful planet where everyone gets along. There's not really any fights. Despite having some extremely well-trained fighters. But that there was nothing he could test himself against. So when you became this ultra-powerful thing that couldn't be killed and could only be stopped and restrained, I feel like he definitely volunteered his services and was like, I want to fight him, I want to beat him, I want to train hard, I want to get powerful, I want to become powerful, and I want to have this dynamic, completely amazing battle. And I want to be able to take him out. I want to be able to win, but I want it to be a well-fought victory. I want us to both be at the edge to our limits. And I want to achieve victory past that. I also think that out of all of them, he's the least sad about losing, because I feel like he has the mentality that if I lost to a worthy opponent. I'm still a legend because I held out and I fought this hard. So I think he's possibly one of the most in-depth, other than our last character I'm going to talk about, of our bosses. But I definitely feel like he had the most self-involved motivation of just wanting to test himself. There wasn't anyone he was trying to save. I definitely don't feel like he had the mentality of our next person. He's compared to the next jailer, or the last jailer, I definitely feel like he had a personal vendetta to make himself better and defeat you, as opposed to the next one, who is the Beat. I love the Beat. She's wonderful, she's joyful, she's giggly, but not in a way that's like undue to what's going on. She's just very bright and cheerful as opposed to everybody else who's like very, very melancholy. It definitely puts the entire fight and the scope of your mission in this game to a completely different level. Because she's very youthful. She's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, she's very juvenile. And even the voice mentions this is what he hates the most, that she volunteered, but they let her, that they let her in, that they let her do this, that they let her, as he feels, throw her life away to be trapped in here for eternity with you. I feel like she was a loner. Put the book down for a minute because this is going to be a long explanation. I feel like she was a loner. I feel like she was somebody who didn't relate well to others and felt very isolated. It could be, this is kind of reinforced in the environment that she chose, which was very cold, and cold usually means to reference an isolated person or someone who is very segregated from society through choice. She didn't relate well to other people. She felt alone. She was alone, which is why I feel like when she said, I see you and I see how we're so much alike, I feel like she definitely saw him as somebody who stood alone, who was alone, and that was something she could see in herself in him. And so she really just wants him to, she really wants him to just give up, to stop fighting. She's very pacifist. Throughout the entire fight until the very end. She doesn't physically fight you. The most she does is use cannons on the side to shoot at you, like an automatic defense. And she uses the kind of reach out the ground barrier things to stop you from being able to advance or hurt her. She's definitely the least aggressive fight and probably the easiest person to fight as long as you have a good scope on dodging. If you're not very good at dodging in the game, then she easily becomes the hardest fight. Because a lot of her involves dodging, platforming, being able to gauge distances, and knowing where to be and how to get yourself there. But I feel like she definitely still loved the people she was around. But that she just didn't feel able to connect with them. So she became a jailer because she wanted to do something to contribute to her people, to feel like she could do something, to feel like she could make a difference. Which she says. She's like, why? She's like, yes, I'm paying the price for being here, the price of isolation, the price of never being able to connect with anyone, of giving up that chance of ever being able to. But compared to what I can do for my people, it was worth it. Here I can make a difference, which she references. I also feel like it's very sad in the end when she starts begging and pleading for him to just stop when she's tired and she's exhausted and she can barely fight and stand up. And in the end, when you do kill her, her last words are, please hold my hand. It definitely reads off as somebody who was afraid of dying alone. That was probably one of her biggest fears, was dying and feeling like no one cared about her, that her death was insignificant, that it meant nothing, that her life meant nothing. I definitely feel like she was a character who sought to make her life mean something, to make her efforts, to make what she did mean something to other people. And that's why she did what she did, why she volunteered, why she wanted to become a guardian. Now, the last two characters I'm going to talk about are going to be on a separate video because they're going to take really, really long. There's a lot to go into about them. So stay posted and also keep up with my Ruby videos as well. They're in the channel as well. So if you're interested in an anime that's totally kick-ass and awesome, check out the video on that. But otherwise, I love you guys and I'll see you later. Arc out. Bye-bye. As I attempt to one-handedly turn this thing off. Am I failing this miserably? I am.